My cherished one, there is a reason your spirit felt a sudden pull the moment your eyes met this message. A reason so urgent, so divinely timed, that even the realms of darkness trembled when your soul aligned with this moment. For the title you just read is not a warning crafted by human lips. It is a spiritual alarm sounding from the highest heavens. And Archangel Michael himself presses this message upon you with a seriousness that shakes the invisible world around you. Because right now Satan wants you to skip this. Not out of annoyance, not out of irritation, but out of desperation. He knows that the moment you hear what is about to be revealed, the chains he wrapped around your blessings, the silent traps he hid around your relationships, and the shadow he cast over what you love the most will begin to crumble. And he fears that more than anything. Listen closely. Michael says, "Beloved, the enemy fears exposure more than defeat. For a defeated enemy can rise again, but an exposed enemy has nowhere left to hide." Right now, a spiritual theft is taking place. Not in the physical, not in your home, not in your bank account, but in the unseen realm where your destiny is shaped before it reaches the earth. Something that belongs to you, something heaven assigned to your name, has been under attack silently, subtly, and intentionally. Michael reveals this. The enemy is not merely attacking what you have. He is targeting what you are becoming. And that is why this moment is so dangerous for him. Because the message you are hearing right now is the one message he tried to bury, silence, distort, and hide from you. He knows that if you listen to this until the very end, you will uncover the exact doorway he has been using to enter your life unnoticed. My dear soul, let me speak plainly, because Archangel Michael has not come with soft words today. He has come with truth that shakes lies apart. There is something in your life right now that has felt off. A draining presence, a sudden heaviness, a shift in energy around someone close to you. A moment where your intuition whispered, something is wrong. You didn't imagine it. You didn't exaggerate it. You sensed a disturbance because your spirit picked up what your eyes could not see. The enemy has been circling around the person or thing you love most, searching for an entry point. And the terrifying part, he found one. But Michael says something far more powerful. What the enemy enters through, he can also be forced out of, if the truth is revealed in time. And that is why the title said within 2 minutes. Because timing is spiritual currency. Delay is the enemy's playground. The vision is his doorway. There is a window, a narrow divine opening, in which heaven can intercept the enemy's next move. That window is open right now as you listen, but it will not stay open forever. Michael has stepped forward with his sword drawn, not for battle alone, but for revelation. Because before a battle ends, the secret of how it began must be exposed. He says, "Beloved, the enemy has touched something he should have never touched. And now heaven is responding. There is something Satan has been whispering around your life. A lie he wants you to believe. A lie that, if it roots itself in your mind, will give him access to what he has been unable to steal for years. You must hear this clearly. The lie is this: you are unprotected. This lie is the enemy's greatest weapon right now. Because the moment you believe you are unprotected, you stop recognizing attacks. But Michael interrupts that lie with holy fire. You are not unprotected. You were never unprotected. You were simply unaware of how fiercely heaven is fighting for you. There is a spiritual ambush planned against you, but the heavens have issued a counterstrike. Someone in your life, someone connected to your emotions or your routine, has unknowingly become a doorway the enemy is trying to use. Not because they are evil, not because they are against you, but because the enemy always chooses the closest proximity to cause the deepest damage. Michael says, Beloved, the enemy uses familiarity to enter unnoticed. This is why you've been feeling a sudden emotional tightening, a tension rising without explanation, a sense that something is shifting behind the scenes. Because it is. But hear this with all the strength of your spirit. The exposure begins now. The truth is unfolding through this very message. And by the time this entire revelation reaches your heart, the enemy will no longer be able to operate in silence around you. You will be cornered. You will be revealed. You will be forced into the open. Michael stands beside you, saying, Beloved, do not fear what is being uncovered. Fear only silence. And today, heaven refuses to be silent. You are moments away from understanding the exact source of this spiritual leakage, and once you see it, Satan will have no choice but to flee. Take a breath, because what comes next will not only expose him, it will remove his grip entirely. My precious soul, as you step deeper into this message, the spiritual atmosphere around you is already shifting. What you felt in the previous moment was only the opening of a revelation that has waited far too long to reach you. Archangel Michael now moves closer, not with the urgency of fear, but with the intensity of truth. He stands in front of you, sword raised, not to frighten you, but to cut through the veil that has blinded you to what has been happening behind the scenes. You are about to understand why the enemy has been circling your life with such persistence, and why he desperately hoped you would never reach this part of the message. There is a reason the darkness is afraid of you. Not because of your strength, not because of your stability, but because of what heaven placed inside you before your first breath. Michael says, Beloved, when you do not know the power you carry, the enemy takes liberties he would not dare take otherwise. And that is exactly what has been happening. The enemy has been acting boldly, almost arrogantly, because he assumed you would not notice the subtle spiritual fingerprints he left behind. But heaven is revealing every detail now. There is a spiritual pattern around you, and it has been repeating itself quietly. Have you noticed how something always shifts when you are close to breakthrough? How someone suddenly becomes distant, irritated, or emotionally unpredictable right at the moment your spirit begins to rise. How unexpected tension appears out of nowhere whenever joy tries to return to your life. This is not coincidence. Michael reveals it plainly. The enemy attacks when the blessing is nearest, not when it is far. The closer you get to a divine turning point, the louder the enemy becomes. In the last few days or weeks, there has been a disturbance, something that unsettled your heart. You may not have spoken it aloud, but you felt it deeply. A strange heaviness, a draining conversation, a shift in someone's tone, a sudden sense that something is pulling energy out of you rather than giving to you. This was not your imagination. This was not overthinking. This was not you being emotional. This was your spirit detecting an intrusion before your mind had the language for it. Michael shows a vision of a shadow approaching the edge of your blessings, reaching out, testing, searching for a place to latch onto. The enemy does not strike randomly. He searches for the weakest point of entry, and unfortunately, he often finds it in the places closest to your heart. That is why someone you care about has been acting differently. That is why certain moments have felt unusually tense or emotionally foggy. The enemy does not need permission to attack. He only needs distraction. And beloved, distraction has been his work in your life recently. He has been whispering lies. He has been stirring confusion. He has been amplifying small misunderstandings into emotional explosions. But Michael raises his voice above all of these distortions. Beloved, clarity is coming. Truth is being restored. What the enemy twisted, heaven will untwist. You are not losing your mind. You are not falling apart. You are not imagining the spiritual chaos. You are awakening to it. The enemy's plan was simple: wear you out emotionally, drain you spiritually, and make you doubt your intuition. Because once you doubt your own inner knowing, you stop paying attention to warnings. But heaven refuses to let you walk blindly. That is why this message found you exactly when it did. The timing is divine. The urgency is intentional. You were meant to hear this now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but in this precise window of spiritual exposure. Michael reveals that the enemy hath been trying to steal something very specific from you: your sense of spiritual security. He wants you to believe that you are vulnerable, that you are alone, that you are unprotected. Because the moment you accept those lies, you unconsciously open the door for him. But today, that door is being nailed shut. The truth is this: you have never walked unprotected. You have never been abandoned. You have never been left alone in the battlefield. There are moments in your life when you survived attacks you did not even know existed. Times when you escaped situations that were designed to destroy you. Incidents where something should have broken you, but instead, it awakened you. These were not coincidences. These were divine interventions. Michael has stood before you many times without you realizing it, shielding you from dangers that would have shattered your destiny. He says, "Beloved, the enemy fears you because heaven has invested too much in you. You are not a random soul drifting through life. You are a chosen one with a spiritual assignment, and Satan fears the ripple effect of your awakening. That is why he is trying to block your relationships, your stability, your clarity, and even your sense of peace. If he can't destroy your purpose, he will attempt to drain your strength. But he will fail because he has already been exposed. As you listen now, something miraculous is happening. Your spirit is aligning with truth. Your discernment is sharpening. Your spiritual shield is rising. Heaven is reclaiming territory the enemy tried to invade. You are no longer in the dark. The unveiling has begun. Stay with this message, beloved. There is still more to reveal, and the next truth will strike the enemy where it hurts the most. But before we continue, take a moment to support this divine work here on earth. Make sure you like this video, share it with someone who needs protection today, and comment to keep this message rising in the algorithm. Subscribe and stay connected, because heaven sends timely warnings, and you should never miss them. My beloved heart, as you step into this next unveiling, the air around you thickens with divine intention. There are moments when heaven whispers, and there are moments when heaven interrupts. This, right now, is an interruption. Archangel Michael stands with a severity that shakes the unseen realm, because what is about to be revealed is the very root of the enemy's current attack in your life. You have noticed signs. You have felt spiritual turbulence. You have sensed a pressure building around you, but you have not yet understood the origin of it. That origin begins to surface now. Michael speaks with deliberate clarity. Beloved, the enemy does not fear your past. He fears your next step. Is your next movement, your next decision, your next awakening that threatens the kingdom of darkness. And because the enemy knows he cannot stop the divine plans written over you, he has chosen instead to interfere with the people and spaces closest to your soul. This is why certain relationships have felt unstable lately. This is why someone you love has been caught in confusion or emotional heaviness. This is why communication has broken in unpredictable ways. The enemy is trying to weaken the circle that supports your spirit. But heaven is not blind to his strategy. Michael reveals something that many people never understand. The enemy rarely attacks the obvious place. He attacks the hidden vulnerability. That vulnerability may be a fear you have not fully faced, a person you depend on emotionally, a memory that still holds weight, or a spiritual wound that has not healed. The enemy studies these areas not because he is powerful, but because he is observant. But today, heaven strips him of the advantage that secrecy has given him. In the spiritual realm, Michael shows the image of a cord, thin, delicate, almost invisible, connecting your heart to something or someone the enemy has been trying to distort. This cord represents attachment, affection, history, expectation, or emotional significance. The enemy cannot break this cord, but he can attempt to poison it. This is why certain interactions have recently felt heavier than normal, sharper than expected, or strangely draining. It's not the person. It's the spiritual interference surrounding them. Michael says, "Beloved, the darkness is manipulating the atmosphere around you, not the people themselves." And understanding this difference is crucial. Without this knowledge, you might misinterpret the signs and think someone has turned against you, when in truth, the enemy is simply using emotional fog to create division. Heaven is clarifying what confusion tried to blur. There is also a reason the title of this message carried such intensity. Because the enemy is not after your possessions. He is not merely after your peace. He is after the love you carry. He is after the person or people you cherish. He knows that if he can affect the heart, he can shake the foundation. But this time, he miscalculated. For the very thing he touched is the thing heaven is now protecting more fiercely than ever. Michael's voice deepens. "Beloved, the enemy entered through subtlety, but he will exit through force. The exposure has begun, and once something is revealed, it loses its power. You will start noticing truths you overlooked. You will sense the difference between emotional noise and spiritual influence. You will feel your discernment sharp as a blade, and you will no longer fall into the confusion the enemy hoped you would. This part of the message is your turning point. Heaven is not simply informing you. Heaven is empowering you. Your awareness is rising. Your spiritual senses are unlocking. Your clarity is returning. And the enemy feels the shift, which is why he is trembling even now at the words reaching your spirit. Michael extends his hand, not to frighten you, but to strengthen you. He says, "Beloved, what the enemy used against you, heaven will now use against him. The doorway through which darkness entered will become the doorway through which light breaks forth. The emotional disruption you experienced will become the proof that your awakening has already begun. The confusion you felt will become the evidence that heaven intervened before the enemy succeeded. You are now stepping into the part of the revelation the enemy most feared." And before this message continues into deeper territory, allow one reminder to anchor you. Hold still for a moment, because what unfolds next carries a truth that will shift everything you thought you understood about this battle. Type "I receive the mystery" in the comments if this is speaking to your spirit. Blessing code 777 has just been released. When heaven exposes what darkness tried to hide, the soul awakened becomes a vessel of light for others. That is why this mission is bigger than a video. It is a lifeline for hearts who cannot yet discern the enemy's traps. As the word is spoken here, it becomes a lamp in places where many walk blind. And the Lord says, "The seed you sow into light returns to you as multiplied protection." I speak this gently yet with authority. I invite you now, my beloved, to help carry this mantle of revelation into more lives. When you choose to release support through Super Thanks, membership, or the PayPal link in the description, you are not giving to a channel. You are activating a divine ripple that rescues souls from spiritual deception. I declare blessings over every giver, that what leaves your hand returns as open doors, restored peace, and divine covering. Step into this moment with faith, and let your support become the very act heaven uses to shield you in the days ahead. My dear chosen soul, as we step further into this revelation, Michael's presence grows heavier, not with fear, but with dominion. The kind of dominion that fills a room without a single word spoken. The kind that makes the enemy tremble simply because truth is approaching. There is a spiritual weight unfolding around you now, a holy gravity drawing hidden things out of darkness and into the open, because heaven refuses to let you walk another day unaware of what has been circling your life. Michael reveals something deeper than what has already been exposed. He says, "Beloved, the battle around you is not random. It is patterned. It is timed. It is intentional. The enemy has studied you far longer than you realize. He knows the rhythms of your emotions, the cycles of your spiritual growth, the moments when your guard is high, and the moments when you feel tired, lonely, stretched, or vulnerable. Darkness attacks during emotional valleys, not emotional peaks. And recently, you entered a valley you didn't even realize had opened beneath your feet. This valley did not feel like depression. It did not feel like devastation. It felt like subtle heaviness, a quiet sense of being drained, a lingering cloud over your thoughts that you kept brushing aside. It may have felt like irritation, confusion, emotional noise from someone close to you, or just a sense that your energy was slipping. But heaven now clarifies what your spirit tried to warn you about, that heaviness was spiritual interference grazing the edges of your life. Michael continues, "Beloved, the enemy attacked not to destroy you, but to distract you. Because destruction is loud, but distraction is silent. Destruction announces itself, but distraction sneaks in unnoticed. And in your life, the enemy has not been trying to break everything at once. He has been trying to weaken one specific area that influences all others, your focus. Why? Because a focused soul is powerful. A wandering soul is vulnerable. When your focus is clear, the enemy has no foothold. But when your focus scatters, even slightly, he inserts lies, doubts, fears, and illusions. You have been fighting shadows recently without realizing they were planted intentionally to divert your attention from a blessing approaching your life. Yes, the blessing. A breakthrough. A divine shift. Because heaven only issues warnings when heaven is preparing an elevation. Michael says, "Beloved, you are close to something heaven assigned long ago. The enemy is attacking because he senses what you have not yet seen. That is why everything has felt intense. That is why someone in your life has been acting in ways that confused or hurt your heart. That is why you felt emotional turbulence in moments that should have felt peaceful. The enemy senses divine movement around you, and he is trying to stir disruption before the blessing arrives fully. But here is the revelation the darkness hoped would stay hidden. What the enemy stirred was not a blockage. It was a signal. A sign of what heaven is preparing to release. When spiritual pressure rises, spiritual promotion is near. When interference increases, breakthroughs move closer. When attacks intensify, it means the enemy is running out of time. Michael shows a vision of the enemy frantically pacing along the borders of your life, searching for an entry point, but finding none strong enough to hold. Each time he touches something connected to your destiny, heaven intervenes. Each time he tries to distort a relationship, heaven exposes his fingerprints. Each time he tries to weaken your spirit, heaven strengthens you through revelation. The enemy is not winning. He is reacting. And reactions are signs that his plans are collapsing. You must understand this clearly. The enemy's behavior around you recently has not been the posture of a confident adversary. It has been the panic of a defeated one. The panic of an enemy who knows heaven is reclaiming ground. The panic of darkness losing territory it never should have touched. The panic of a spirit that recognizes the overwhelming force of Archangel Michael's presence encamping around you in this very moment. Michael reveals a truth few ever hear. Beloved, the enemy is afraid of what your obedience will unlock. Because obedience creates openings. Revelation creates strength. Awareness creates resistance. And every moment you remain in this message, darkness loses influence it once assumed it had. Heaven is breaking illusion after illusion. Layer after layer of confusion is falling off you. Clarity is returning. Discernment is awakening. And the enemy is being pushed into the open, where he cannot manipulate, distort, or deceive. There is also someone in your life the enemy has been targeting indirectly, using their emotions, their confusion, or their fatigue as a soft landing point for spiritual interference. You have noticed the shift. You have sensed the inconsistency. You have felt the distance or heaviness. But hear this clearly, they are not the enemy. They are the battlefield. Heaven is stepping in now to bring stabilization where there had been instability. No spiritual manipulation will survive this exposure. Michael declares, Beloved, nothing the enemy built will last past this revelation. And truly, something has shifted even now. The spiritual cloud is thinning. The fog is clearing. The enemy's access points are being sealed. What once felt heavy is already becoming lighter. What once felt confusing is aligning. What once felt spiritually draining is losing its power. You are not at the end of this revelation. You are still in the unfolding. And there is a deeper layer coming. One that will name the very tactic the enemy used and the exact spiritual breach through which he attempted to steal what belongs to you. Heaven is preparing to uncover the part the enemy never wanted you to see. My treasured soul, as you move deeper into this unfolding revelation, a divine silence rests over the atmosphere around you. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence that comes right before truth pierces through the veil. Archangel Michael stands watchfully, his wings stretched wide, forming a barrier between you and every force that has sought access to your life. His expression is stern, focused, and fixed on the spiritual currents swirling around your destiny. You may not see it with your natural eyes, but in the unseen realm, a confrontation has already begun. Not a battle of swords, but a battle of exposure. Heaven is revealing something now that will shift your understanding of this entire season. Michael says, Beloved, the enemy has not been attacking you randomly. He has been attacking you strategically. And when an enemy attacks strategically, it means he fears what he cannot predict. You have reached a moment in your spiritual journey where your growth, your resilience, your prayers, and your inner awakening have become unpredictable to the kingdom of darkness. The enemy cannot anticipate your next move, and when darkness cannot predict, darkness panics. In this panic, the enemy attempted something subtle, something almost invisible, something woven into the smallest fibers of your daily life. He attempted to slip into your routine, not your disasters, not your weaknesses, your routine. Because routine shapes destiny. Routine forms habits. Routine creates emotional rhythms. And recently, one routine in your life has been quietly disrupted. A habit shifted. A pattern changed. Something small but meaningful slipped out of place. You brushed it off, assuming it was nothing, but heaven reveals now that minor disruption was an attempted entry point. Michael continues, Beloved, the enemy looks for the tiny cracks, not the open doors. Because open doors are protected. Open doors are noticeable, but cracks go ignored. and the enemy thrives in what is ignored. That crack may have been emotional exhaustion after a long day. It may have been a moment when your confidence wavered. It may have been an unexpected tension with someone close to you. It may have been spiritual fatigue, a moment where your prayers felt heavy instead of flowing. These moments are not weaknesses. They are human. But the enemy studies humanity to exploit vulnerability. Recently, the enemy placed spiritual pressure against that crack, not to break you, but to weaken your awareness. He knows he cannot steal blessings protected by heaven. He cannot destroy what God has anointed. But he can try to make you too distracted to notice what heaven is releasing. And distraction is the first step towards spiritual theft. Michael reveals, "Beloved, the enemy is not after your possessions. He is after your attention. Because whatever captures your attention eventually shapes your spiritual alignment. If the enemy can distract your focus even slightly, he can distort what you see, amplify what you fear, and minimize what you carry. But he has failed, because heaven has stopped the distortion before it could take full form. There is a moment recently, a specific moment, when you felt suddenly overwhelmed without explanation. A moment when your peace dropped without a clear cause. A moment when something inside you tightened, and you could not express why. That moment was not emotional chaos. It was spiritual interference brushing against your atmosphere. You felt the weight of something unseen trying to push itself into your space. But the moment you felt that weight, even if briefly, with the moment heaven intervened. Michael says, "Beloved, your spirit is more awake than you realize." It detected danger before your mind understood it. You may have dismissed the feeling. You may have ignored it. But heaven did not ignore it. That sensation was your spirit sounding the alarm. And the alarm is what allowed heaven to intercept the enemy's move before it solidified. And now we go deeper into what Michael calls the core of the enemy's plan. The enemy has not been trying to attack your life directly. He has been trying to attack your perception. Perception shapes reality. Perception influences prayer. Perception determines emotional strength. If the enemy can distort the way you see yourself, someone you love, or your situation, he can manipulate the direction of your decisions. And a misdirected decision could delay destiny. But only if heaven allows it. Today, heaven does not. Michael shows a vision of a swirling fog that the enemy attempted to place around a particular area of your heart. It may have been a relationship. It may have been a dream you stopped believing in. It may have been an opportunity that suddenly felt unreachable. The fog made you question what was once clear. The fog made you hesitate where you once moved confidently. The fog made you interpret someone's behavior through emotional confusion instead of spiritual clarity. And yet, even in the fog, your spirit kept searching for truth. That searching is why heaven is speaking now. Michael says, "Beloved, fog cannot survive in the presence of revelation." And revelation is what this moment is releasing. The enemy's fog is breaking. The emotional weight is lifting. The confusion is unraveling. And your spirit is rising with every word reaching you. The truth is this: the enemy attempted to trap you in a cycle of misinterpretation. He wanted you to misread signs, misjudge intentions, and misunderstand the movements around you. Because if he could distort your understanding, he could distort your direction. But heaven is not allowing distortion to continue. Heaven is restoring clarity, insight, and spiritual sharpness. His message is not simply information. It is recalibration. You are being pulled out of the enemy's fog and placed back into divine alignment. Your discernment is reopening. Your intuition is clearing. Your spiritual senses are strengthening. My beloved, As we enter this next dimension of revelation, the realm around you shifts again. What was previously concealed in the shadows now begins to move into the light, as if truth itself is being summoned by your willingness to hear. Archangel Michael stands nearer than before, his sword glowing with a brilliance that causes every falsehood the enemy planted to tremble. A moment like this does not happen often. A moment when heaven decides that you will no longer walk blindly through an atmosphere manipulated against you. A moment when the truth you were never meant to miss finally reaches you. Michael speaks with unmistakable precision. Beloved, the enemy used something against you that you overlooked because it appeared harmless. It was not a major event. It was not a dramatic attack. It was something ordinary, something woven into your daily emotional rhythm. And that is exactly why the enemy chose it. Darkness never begins with the dramatic. Darkness begins with what you ignore. Recently, a shift occurred inside you, subtle, almost invisible. A moment where you felt doubtful without reason. A moment where you second-guessed yourself. A moment where something that used to feel clear suddenly became foggy. You assumed it was normal. You assumed you were simply tired. But heaven reveals that shift was engineered. It was crafted. It was planted. The enemy placed a spiritual weight over your perception, not heavy enough to crush you, but just heavy enough to blur what heaven was showing you. His strategy was not destruction. His strategy was distortion. Because if he could distort your vision, he could influence how you moved, what you believed, what you feared, and what you pursued. He targeted your inner clarity because he could not touch your divine assignment directly. Michael says, beloved, the enemy attacked through influence, not force. Influence is powerful because it feels like your own thought. It feels like your own emotion. It feels like your own interpretation. And yet, its origin comes from a place outside of you. The enemy whispered into your atmosphere, and those whispers attempted to form narratives in your mind, narratives that were never yours. Narratives of doubt, narratives of fear, narratives of emotional misinterpretation. That is why you felt suddenly distanced from someone close to you. That is why a relationship you value felt strangely fragile recently. That is why you sensed tension that did not belong to you. The enemy was bending the spiritual air around you, hoping you would see through a distorted lens. But Michael stands now, sword raised, slicing through the lies that tried to claim your thoughts. He declares, beloved, your clarity returns now. What the enemy blurred, heaven restores. The truth is that the enemy did not simply try to confuse your mind. He tried to tamper with your emotional alignment. Emotions are the gateway to perception. When your emotions are steady, you discern accurately. When they are shaken, you misread situations, signs, and even your own intuition. The enemy attempted to shake your emotional foundation by stirring subtle conflict around you. Not loud conflict, not obvious conflict, atmospheric conflict. You notice the signs. A sudden shift in tone from someone you love. A strange coldness in a familiar connection. A heaviness in your heart that appeared without explanation. These were not coincidences. These were the ripples of spiritual interference pressing into your space. The enemy wanted you to respond emotionally instead of spiritually, because emotional reactions create entry points. Spiritual awareness closes them. But you must hear this clearly. The enemy's interference failed. Heaven intervened before the distortion reached its full strength. Your spirit was awakened in time. The warning arrived precisely when the interference reached its peak. And what the enemy intended for confusion has now become a revelation of his weakness. Michael reveals another layer of truth. Beloved, The enemy fears what you are stepping into more than you understand. He targeted your emotions because he could not touch your destiny. He targeted your perception because he could not touch your purpose. Every attack you have felt recently was an act of desperation, not victory. The enemy knows something is approaching your life, an opening, a shift, a release that will elevate you spiritually and emotionally. And he hoped to weaken you before you stepped into it. But he underestimated one thing, the grace that surrounds you. Heaven has been watching him closely. Heaven had been monitoring every move. Heaven hath been waiting for the exact moment to expose his interference fully. That moment is now. The fog he placed over your perception is lifting. The emotional tension he tried to create is dissolving. The confusion he whispered into your atmosphere is losing its power. Michael says, "Beloved, restoration is already unfolding. Your clarity is not returning slowly. It is returning with force. The insight you lost is coming back sharper. The peace that left you is returning deeper. The discernment you question is reawakening stronger. You are not the same person who began this message. You are becoming spiritually fortified with every truth revealed." Before we move into the next revelation, pause for a moment. If heaven is speaking to you, if this message is exposing what you could not articulate, make sure this light reaches as many souls as possible. Like this message so heaven's warning spread further. Comment so the algorithm lifts this truth into more eyes. Share this with someone whose spirit needs protection. And subscribe so that every time heaven sends a message through this platform, it reaches you without delay. The enemy works through silence and isolation. Heaven works through connection and revelation. My beloved, as we step into this next unveiling, the spiritual landscape around you grows clearer, sharper, and far more revealing than before. Archangel Michael moves with a confidence that tells you something powerful. Heaven is no longer simply observing what the enemy is doing around you. Heaven is now confronting it. The atmosphere is charged, not with fear, but with authority. You can almost sense the shift, the way the unseen world bends when divine truth begins to descend. Michael speaks with a depth that resonates through the places in you that words cannot normally reach. He says, "Beloved, the enemy has been working in an area of your life where you least expected him. Your anticipation. Anticipation is the energy that shapes your future. It is the lens through which you look at what is coming. If the enemy can weaken your anticipation, he can weaken your alignment with divine timing. And recently, your anticipation has been tested. You may have felt moments where your hope flickered. Moments when your excitement for the future felt dimmer than usual. Moments where uncertainty rose from nowhere and sat quietly in your chest, even when things seemed outwardly normal. This was not emotional instability. It was not lack of faith. It was not you losing strength. It was the enemy attempting to drain your forward momentum. Michael reveals that the enemy strategically tries to attack anticipation because anticipation is prophetic. When you anticipate goodness, heaven responds. When anticipation is stolen, progress slows. The enemy wants you to anticipate delay, not breakthrough. He wants you to anticipate disappointment, not fulfillment. He wants you to anticipate loss, not restoration. Because he knows that anticipation shapes interpretation, and interpretation shapes your next steps. But Michael leans forward now, lowering his voice as though releasing a secret directly into your spirit. Beloved, what the enemy touched, heaven is now reclaiming. Your anticipation is not dying. It is awakening. The very pressure the enemy applied is the same pressure that is now pushing you into a deeper dimension of spiritual awareness. What he meant to weaken is actually strengthening you. Heaven is using this interference to reveal how sensitive your spirit truly is. You discern shifts before they happen. You feel changes before they manifest. You sense spiritual pressure before it becomes visible. The sensitivity is not a burden. It is your weapon. The enemy tried to twist it into worry, but heaven is turning it into discernment. There is also a personal detail heaven shows in this moment. Someone connected to your heart has been carrying emotional weight, and you have felt it without understanding why. This is not your imagination. You have been spiritually absorbing the residue of what they are silently fighting. The enemy hoped that this emotional transfer would blur your clarity and exhaust your energy. But heaven steps in now to separate what is yours from what is not. Michael says, "Beloved, not every heaviness you feel belongs to you. Some of the emotions, fears, and sudden pressures you have been sensing are not from your own spirit. You have been spiritually intercepting the struggles of someone who matters deeply to you." The enemy tried to use this connection as a doorway, because he knows the love you carry makes you vulnerable to absorbing burdens. But heaven is cutting off that interference now. Emotional entanglement without spiritual clarity is always dangerous, and heaven is ensuring that the enemy cannot use that connection against you again. Michael continues, revealing layer after layer. Beloved, the enemy misread your compassion as weakness. He assumed that if he stirred emotional confusion around someone close to you, you would crumble under the weight of concern. But instead, your spirit began to rise. You felt something was wrong. You sensed a misalignment. You felt the shift that others could not name. And that sensitivity is what alerted heaven to intervene. You must hear this clearly. The enemy did not realize how guarded you are in this season. He attempted to manipulate your emotions because he could not touch your destiny. He attempted to create tension because he could not break your spiritual covering. He attempted to twist perception because he could not alter divine instruction. Every attack was designed to make you doubt, but you endured. The truth is this: your endurance in this season has become a shield around everything connected to you. Heaven honors endurance. Heaven strengthens those who refuse to give up. Heaven moves for those who remain alert even when they feel tired. And you have remained alert. Michael reveals another hidden detail. Beloved, the enemy tried to operate in silence because he feared what would happen if you saw him. Exposure is defeat. Darkness survives only where there is no awareness. But once seen, it loses authority. And that is exactly what is unfolding now. You are becoming aware. You are seeing through distortions. You are recognizing interference. And every new level of awareness becomes a closing door the enemy can no longer enter through. There is one more truth in this part. A truth the enemy hoped you would never uncover. He has been trying to make you believe that you are on the brink of losing something important. But that whisper was a lie. Heaven reveals that you are not on the brink of loss. You are on the brink of revelation. What felt like loss was actually spiritual turbulence caused by the enemy being forced out. The ground beneath you is stabilizing. The emotional fog is clearing. The spiritual heaviness is lifting. The interference is collapsing. And your anticipation is returning with a purity the enemy will no longer be able to corrupt. My beloved, as you step into this next realm of revelation, the atmosphere shifts with a force that is impossible to ignore. There are moments in spiritual life when heaven whispers, moments when heaven calls, and then there are moments, like this, when heaven intervenes with unmistakable authority. Archangel Michael stands before you now not in warning, but in declaration. A declaration that the enemy's strategy has reached its breaking point. A declaration that what was hidden behind layers of confusion is now surfacing into undeniable clarity. A declaration that this very moment marks the collapse of an assignment that darkness tried to place over your life. Michael speaks with a quiet intensity that shakes the unseen. Beloved, the enemy believed you would never recognize the turning point, but you have arrived at it. The turning point is not an event. It is awareness. Awareness is the moment a chain breaks without noise. Awareness is the moment a prison door swings open even while the prisoner is still standing inside. Awareness is the moment the enemy loses the power of secrecy. And in your life, that moment is happening right now. You are no longer walking through the fog the enemy placed around you. You are walking above it. Heaven reveals that the enemy's greatest weapon against you was not darkness, it was ambiguity. He wanted you uncertain. He wanted you guessing. He wanted you unsettled. Because uncertainty weakens spiritual posture. Ambiguity blurs discernment. But once truth enters, dissection dies. Michael says, beloved, truth has entered. The fog is no longer thick. The emotional distortions are no longer attaching to your spirit. The heaviness that once lingered without explanation is losing its grip. You are stepping into a realm of spiritual clarity that the enemy dreaded you would reach. Michael now unveils the deeper strategy the enemy used against you. He did not simply try to weaken your emotions. He did not merely distort your perception. He attempted to tamper with your timing. Heaven operates in cycles and seasons. Blessings arrive in alignment. Breakthroughs unfold when the heart, the spirit, and divine timing interlock perfectly. The enemy hoped to push you out of alignment by stirring unrest in your heart at the exact moment heaven was preparing to open a door for you. This is why you felt sudden emotional turbulence. This is why someone close to you felt distant or conflicted. This is why you experienced strange delays, miscommunications, or unusual tension that seemed to appear and disappear without explanation. The enemy was trying to introduce spiritual noise at the precise moment heaven was forming divine clarity. But heaven has overruled him. Michael reveals, beloved, heaven has restored your timing. You are not behind. You are not off track. You are right where the breakthrough will meet you. What the enemy meant for delay has now become a signal, a sign that heaven is preparing something significant. Your recent discomfort was not punishment. It was spiritual pressure caused by the enemy being forced out of the space he tried to occupy. The heaviness you felt was not your spirit weakening. It was the enemy being dragged away from what he thought he could influence. You have been interpreting turbulence as danger, but heaven reveals it as transition. Michael shows you a vision, a door glowing with divine light. The enemy stands outside it, powerless, clawing softly at the edges but unable to enter because heaven has sealed it with fire. A door represents something precious, a relationship heaven is protecting, a blessing heaven is forming, a destiny heaven is unfolding. The enemy wanted to touch what lies behind that door, but he failed. Heaven has declared it off limits. You must hear this next truth with the full strength of your spirit. What the enemy tried to steal from you is the very thing heaven is strengthening. A vision, a purpose, a dream. The part of your heart that has been under spiritual pressure is now under divine protection. Nothing the enemy attempted will survive this exposure. His plans are unraveling. His influence is collapsing. His whispers are dissolving like smoke against the wind of revelation. Michael speaks again, with a tone that carries finality. Beloved, the enemy has run out of entrances. Every tactic he used, subtle emotional manipulation, distorted perception, interference through someone connected to you, atmospheric heaviness, spiritual misalignment, has been exposed and shut down. You are stepping out of the enemy's reach and into heaven's alignment. This is why your spirit feels different even as you read. Something inside you is rising again. Your discernment is sharpening. Your hope is returning. Your internal balance is being restored. Now, beloved, before this part of the revelation concludes, hear this. The next revelation will not only uncover the origin of the attack but will reveal the divine assignment that triggered it. The enemy targeted you because heaven marked you. And what heaven marks, heaven defends. Type "I am chosen" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1122 is now activated. When the enemy strategy collapses, heaven calls the awakened ones to carry light into the places where others still walk blind. This message you are hearing is not just for you. It is a weapon against deception for every soul who finds it. The Lord says, what you sow into light becomes a shield around your destiny. I speak now with grace and authority. If this revelation has opened your eyes, join in strengthening this mission by sowing through Super Thanks membership or the PayPal link in the description. This is not charity. This is alignment with heaven's movement. Those who support the spread of truth partake in the blessings released through it. May every giver be covered in spiritual protection, accelerated breakthrough, and divine clarity. Move now, beloved. Let your seed speak louder than the enemy's whispers. My beloved, as we step into this next unveiling, the spiritual atmosphere around you grows still, not with emptiness but with anticipation. This kind of stillness means heaven is preparing to reveal something that was never meant to remain hidden. Archangel Michael stands before you now in a posture unlike the previous moments. His wings are slightly lowered, not in weakness but in reverence. Because what is being revealed in this part is not only about the enemy's strategy, it is about your identity, your calling, and the divine signature that rests upon your life. Michael speaks softly, yet his voice carries a resonance that shakes every shadow lingering near you. Beloved, the attack against you intensified not because you are weak but because you are marked. The enemy recognized something rising inside you before you recognized it. You have been stepping into a new spiritual frequency, a new dimension of perception, a new level of maturity in your spirit. And darkness is always threatened by elevation. When your spirit elevates, the enemy sees it before the world does. There is something heaven planted in you long ago, a calling, a purpose, a spiritual authority that you have only glimpsed in small moments. Recently, this authority began to awaken more strongly. You may have felt sudden urges to withdraw, to reflect, to pray differently, to seek deeper truth, to detach from certain patterns. These urges were not random. They were heaven preparing you. Your spirit was beginning to rise, and the enemy felt the ground beneath you shifting. He sensed that your awakening would disrupt every scheme he had planned. Michael reveals, beloved, the enemy attacked you because you were about to see what he hoped you would never notice, your influence. You do not simply exist. You shift atmospheres. Your presence stabilizes others. Your words carry healing. Your intuition protects people without you even realizing it. Your silence can calm chaos. Your compassion breaks spiritual walls. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a divine instrument. And the enemy trembles when such a soul awakens to its own impact. This is why the enemy tried to distort your emotions. He hoped you would question yourself. He hoped you would misread the signals. He hoped you would doubt the strength of your intuition. Because once a person doubts themselves, they stop stepping boldly into their calling. Doubt was the seed he tried to plant in you. But heaven uprooted it before it could take root. There is also someone connected to your life whose spiritual state has been influencing your energy more than usual. Heaven shows that this person has been wrestling with internal battles, unresolved emotional wounds, or hidden fears. You felt their weight not because you are weak, but because you are spiritually sensitive to those you care about. The enemy tried to use their struggle as a gateway to affect your atmosphere. But listen closely. Their struggle is not a sign of failing connection. It is a sign that heaven is preparing healing for them as well. Michael says, "Beloved, your spirit is stronger than the enemy realized. You did not collapse under emotional turbulence. You did not fall into confusion. You did not surrender to despair. Even at your most vulnerable moments, your spirit kept fighting, kept searching for clarity, kept reaching for peace. That persistence is what protected you without you knowing it. Heaven responds to persistence. Heaven strengthens those who refuse to break even when pressure rises. Now we step into the revelation the enemy feared most, the origin of the attack. Michael reveals that the enemy began moving against you the moment heaven released a new spiritual assignment over your life. Whether you felt it or not, whether you recognized it or not, heaven hath been preparing you for a new role, a higher level of spiritual discernment, a deeper connection with divine guidance, a stronger ability to interpret spiritual movements. When heaven elevates you, darkness reacts. This elevation is why you experienced emotional shifts. It is why your dreams felt different. It is why your relationships were tested. It is why your energy fluctuated. Heaven was transitioning you into a role the enemy hoped you were not ready for. But you are ready. Everything you endured has prepared you for this moment of clarity. Michael speaks again, with unshakable certainty. Beloved, you are stepping into the version of yourself that darkness hoped you would never meet. Not the tired version, not the confused version, not the fearful version, the awakened version, the discerning version, the spiritually aligned version, the version of yourself who sees beyond surface, who recognizes spiritual interference instantly, who knows when heaven is moving and when the enemy is trying to mimic movement. You are not rising accidentally. You are rising because heaven has called your spirit to stand in a new authority. And with this rise comes responsibility. Heaven needs you awake. Heaven needs you aware. Heaven needs you steady, because there are people, connections, and blessings aligned with your destiny that depend on the strength you are stepping into now. Before this part closes, Michael offers a final truth. Beloved, do not rush away from what you are hearing. The next revelation contains the blueprint of the enemy's final attempt. Let your spirit hold steady. A deeper unveiling is moments away, and you will not want to miss what heaven is preparing to expose next. Hold on, for what comes after this will shift your understanding in a way nothing else has. My beloved, as we continue into this sacred unraveling, the atmosphere around you deepens with an unmistakable seriousness. There is a weight in this moment, not a burden, but a divine intensity, because heaven is preparing to unveil the exact point where the enemy believed he could slip into your life unnoticed. Archangel Michael stands close, his presence forming a shield around your spirit as truth approaches you like light piercing through the final layer of night. You are stepping into knowledge that was once concealed. You are stepping into clarity the enemy never wanted you to possess. Michael speaks with a clarity that cuts through every remaining shadow. Beloved, the enemy attempted one last move, one final tactic, hoping you would overlook it. This tactic was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, disguised as normalcy. He wrapped it in the familiar so you would never question it. But heaven questioned it. Heaven observed it. Heaven watched carefully as the enemy crept toward a place he believed was unguarded. What was this place? It was your threshold moment. The moment between emotional vulnerability and spiritual decision. Every person, no matter how strong, experiences these threshold moments, times when fatigue weighs down the spirit, when uncertainty clouds judgment, when emotions speak louder than truth, when the heart longs for reassurance. The enemy waited for yours. He studied your rhythm. He listened to your fears. He observed your emotional cycles. And when he sensed a moment of softness, he made his move. Michael reveals, beloved, the enemy tried to anchor a lie in your heart when you were most exhausted. This lie was not destructive in appearance. It was disguised as caution. It was disguised as overthinking. It was disguised as self-vow. That is how the enemy enters, through thoughts that sound like your own. He whispered a narrative that made you question your direction, question someone dear to you, question your own intuition. His goal was simple. He stabilized your perception just enough so you would misinterpret divine movement as danger. You must understand that your intuition has always been stronger than the enemy predicted. Even when confusion tried to cover you, your spirit kept reaching for truth. You felt something was off, even when you couldn't name it. You sensed interference, even when you doubted your own feelings. Heaven watched this battle unfold in silence, not because heaven was absent, but because heaven was allowing you to see your own spiritual strength awakening. The enemy wanted you to question yourself so deeply that you would retreat from your own calling. He wanted you to step back. He wanted you to disconnect. He wanted you to assume that what heaven was building was somehow unsafe. But he miscalculated. Because instead of pulling away, you leaned in. Instead of withdrawing, you searched. Instead of shutting down, you listened. And in that listening, heaven found an opening to speak. Michael stands tall now, radiating a fierce authority. Beloved, the enemy's last tactic has failed because your spirit refused to surrender. What tried to weaken you only sharpened you. What tried to distract you only awakened you. What tried to silence you only deepened your awareness. You are not the same person you were before this battle began. You are more discerning. You are more aligned. You are more spiritually alert. Heaven now reveals the exact structure of the enemy's plan. He aimed to create internal chaos that would influence your external decisions. If he could nudge your mind, he believed he could redirect your path. If he could distort your emotions, he believed he could distort your relationships. If he could disrupt your focus, to believe he could interrupt your destiny. But he underestimated the resilience heaven placed in you. You did not break. You did not fall. You did not lose yourself. You awakened. There is something powerful happening in your spirit even now. A restoration you may not fully feel yet, but it is unfolding. Your clarity is returning. Your inner calm is settling. Your intuition is rising with new sharpness. The places where confusion once lived are becoming illuminated. The enemy senses this shift and trembles, because when a soul returns fully to itself, every lie loses its grip. Michael reveals another truth. Beloved, you are stepping into spiritual authority, and the enemy cannot operate where authority stands. You are no longer in a reactive state. You are in a commanding state. You are beginning to see things before they happen, sense shifts before they manifest, recognize danger before it approaches. This is not paranoia. This is spiritual maturity. And now, heaven prepares you for what comes next. Michael says the next part of this revelation will expose why the enemy believed this was the only time he could strike, and why that window has now closed permanently. The final layers are coming, and they will reveal the fullness of heaven's involvement in this season of your life. Before we move forward, beloved, allow your heart to stay connected to this message. Make sure you like this message so its reach expands to others who are fighting unseen battles. Comment to keep the algorithm pushing this truth into the lives of those who desperately need it. Share it with someone whose spirit needs protection. And subscribe so you never miss a single divine warning or revelation released through this channel. Heaven is moving, and you should always be aligned with its voice. My beloved, as we enter this next unfolding, the air around your spirit begins to settle into a deeper knowing. There is a quiet intensity here, the kind that comes when heaven has already made its decision, and the enemy has already recognized his defeat. Archangel Michael stands before you, not in battle posture now, but in the stance of one delivering a final revelation before the victory is fully declared. You have walked through the layers of exposure with courage, and because of that, heaven is now ready to show you the truth behind the timing of this entire attack. Michael begins with a revelation that reaches into the deepest chambers of your spirit. Beloved, the enemy believed this was his only chance to strike because he sensed a divine shift approaching your life, something so significant that once it arrived, he would never be able to reach you in the same way again. The enemy's urgency was not because you were vulnerable. It was because you were about to become untouchable in an area he once accessed. Heaven has been elevating you into a new spiritual position, and the enemy felt the ground beneath you rising. Understand this clearly. The attack was not random. It was a reaction. A desperate, frantic reaction to a blessing, a revelation, or a spiritual awakening that was set to come into your life. Heaven had already released something toward you, something the enemy could sense even before you did. A new spiritual authority, a new relational alignment, a new doorway opening, a new phase of clarity. Whatever this divine release is, it has been approaching your life like a wave building in strength. And the enemy panicked because he knew that once this wave reached you, the influence he once held would collapse completely. Michael reveals the truth with precision. Beloved, the enemy launched his attack because he saw your elevation before you felt it. You may have thought you were in a season of confusion. You may have felt weakened. You may have believed something was slipping away. But while you were questioning your path, the enemy was trembling at what was coming toward you. He saw the angels mobilizing. He saw heaven setting things in order. He saw blessings being aligned. He saw protection fortifying around your relationships. He saw doors forming that he could not close. He saw your spirit expanding in strength, and his only response was desperation. This is why the attack felt emotional rather than external. This is why it touched your perception, your clarity, your relationships, your sense of grounding. The enemy wanted to delay your readiness. He wanted to cloud your understanding so you would misinterpret what heaven was building. The enemy's tactic was never to destroy your life. That is impossible when heaven has marked you. His tactic was to make you misjudge what heaven was forming. If he could get you to see blessing as danger, progress as instability, or divine shifts as confusion, he believed he could slow what was already in motion. But here is the part that exposes his greatest miscalculation. Michael says, Beloved, the enemy underestimated how quickly your spirit would awaken. Heaven had been preparing you for this season long before the enemy launched his plan. Your intuition, your sensitivity, your spiritual awareness, these were not accidental traits. They were training. Heaven was sharpening your perception. Heaven was strengthening your discernment. Heaven was teaching your spirit to recognize spiritual interference before it took root. This is why, even in confusion, something inside you resisted. Even when doubt whispered, something pushed back. Even when fear nudged you, something in you stood firm. You felt the disturbance. You sensed the shift. You knew something unseen was touching your atmosphere. You did not collapse under the pressure because heaven had already made you stronger than the enemy suspected. What he hoped would weaken you actually exposed him. Michael now reveals one of the most important truths of this entire message. Beloved, you were never losing anything. You were shedding what could not go with you into the next season. The emotional turbulence you felt, the shifts in certain relationships, the tension that rose without clear cause. These were not signs of collapse, they were signs of purification. Heaven was separating you from burdens, illusions, and spiritual noise that would have interfered with your next elevation. The enemy tried to label the process as loss, but heaven intended it as preparation. There is a stillness in the realm around you now because heaven is establishing a new foundation under your feet. You are stepping into a season where clarity will guide you more than emotion. You are stepping into a season where discernment will protect you before danger even approaches. You are stepping into a season where heaven will align the right people around you and expose the wrong ones instantly. What the enemy attempted has backfired. Every lie is turning into revelation. Every confusion is turning into direction. Every emotional weight is turning into spiritual strength. Michael's voice grows steady, filled with finality. Beloved, the enemy's window has closed. He cannot touch what heaven has sealed. That is the truth over your life now. You are stepping out of the enemy's reach. You are stepping out of the fog. You are stepping out of uncertainty. You are stepping into divine timing, divine protection, divine clarity, and divine alignment. Nothing that was meant for you has been lost. Everything assigned to you is still on its way. And the next part will reveal the final transformation that heaven has prepared. Why this battle was necessary, what it awakened in you, and how heaven will now move on your behalf with undeniable force. My beloved, as you enter this final revelation, heaven stands entirely still. This is the stillness that comes when a battle has already been decided, when the enemy has been silenced, and when truth is preparing to crown you with understanding. Archangel Michael stands before you not as a warrior ready to fight, but as a messenger delivering the conclusion of a spiritual case that heaven has already ruled in your favor. You have walked through exposure, through awakening, through clarity, and now you are standing at the threshold of transformation, the moment when everything that was revealed begins to shift what you carry, how you see, and who you become. Michael's presence feels different now. The intensity that once burned like fire now settles like a mantle resting on your shoulders. He speaks softly, but with a weight that cannot be ignored. Beloved, the battle you walked through was never meant to break you. It was designed to reveal you. Everything the enemy attempted, every whisper, every fog of confusion, every emotional disruption, was ultimately turned into a mirror showing you who you truly are. And in this moment, heaven reveals the final truth. You have emerged with a spiritual authority the enemy hoped you would never possess. The enemy attacked your perception because heaven was strengthening your discernment. The enemy attacked your emotions because heaven was maturing your spirit. The enemy attacked your relationships because heaven was purifying your connections. The enemy attacked your anticipation because heaven was positioning your future. The enemy attacked your identity because heaven was awakening your calling. Every strike had a counterweight. Every disruption had a divine response. You were not simply enduring. You were evolving. You were not merely surviving. You were being shaped. And now heaven stands ready to place in your hands the fullness of what you gained in the battle. Michael reveals this with absolute clarity. Beloved, the version of you that stands here now is not the version the enemy began attacking. You are wiser. You are sharper. You are spiritually awake in ways that you were not before. You can sense interference before it enters. You can feel emotional shifts before they anchor. You can see spiritual patterns unfolding even without visible proof. You have become spiritually dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. And this is why the enemy feared your awakening so intensely. But heaven is not only ending the enemy's influence. Heaven is establishing something new, something permanent. Michael says, "Beloved, heaven is sealing the access points the enemy once used." This is profound. There were emotional entry points, vulnerabilities, old wounds, or unhealed places the enemy used to test your stability. Those places are closing now. Heaven has fortified your spirit. A new spiritual boundary has formed around your life, one that the enemy cannot cross. There is also a divine reversal beginning inside you. The heaviness you carried is lifting. The confusion you endured is transforming into wisdom. The delays you felt are turning into acceleration. The emotional disruption is becoming spiritual depth. You will notice this shift in the coming days. Conversations will feel different. Decisions will feel clearer. Peace will return in a way that feels unfamiliar only because it is deeper than what you had before. Michael now reveals something personal, something that touches the part of you that fought the hardest. Beloved, what you thought was falling apart was actually falling into alignment. The tension in your relationships, the emotional distance, the sudden uncertainties, they were never signs of collapse. They were indicators of transition. Heaven was shifting connections into their proper place. Heaven was removing influences that clouded your spirit. Heaven was strengthening bonds that matter for your destiny. What felt like disconnection was heaven pulling you closer to what is truly meant for you. And now, beloved, we reach the final unveiling, the one the enemy feared the most. Michael declares, "Beloved, heaven is about to reveal what the enemy tried to steal." There is something specific, something deeply connected to your heart, that the enemy attempted to influence through emotional distortion. A connection, a purpose, a direction, a dream, a part of your identity. The enemy wanted to place doubt where heaven had placed destiny. But not only did he fail, his attempt has now drawn heaven's spotlight to that very thing. Heaven will restore it. Heaven will strengthen it. Heaven will protect it. Heaven will elevate it. The very area the enemy touched is the area heaven is now blessing. Michael's final words carry the weight of a divine decree. Beloved, you are stepping into a season where the enemy will witness what he could not prevent. Everything that was delayed will now accelerate. Everything that was distorted will now clarify. Everything that was threatened will now be secured. You are stepping into a season where heaven's hand will be unmistakable in every area of your life. Before this revelation concludes, allow your heart to speak into this sacred moment. Type "I rise" in the light in the comments if this message has awakened something in you. Lesson code 4444 is now released over your life. Beloved, when heaven finishes a battle on your behalf, your gratitude becomes a seed that multiplies into the lives of countless others. As you have received this revelation, remember that the light you carry can become a pathway for someone still fighting in the dark. The Lord says, "Those who sow into my work become bearers of my fire." If this message has touched your spirit, I invite you now. Step boldly into partnership with this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or the PayPal link in the description. This is not about supporting a channel. This is about strengthening a divine movement that rescues souls from deception. Every seed you release becomes a shield, a covering, a ripple of truth that heaven amplifies. And may the God who sees your obedience pour back into your life with multiplied favor, protection, and revelation. Move in faith, beloved. Let your giving become the declaration that light will always triumph in your life.